Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fireside Fridays. My name is Mr. Rudloff. Here with me, I have.
Micah Rosas.
And Clayton Thompson.
This is a podcast designed to give seniors a voice in the internet community and to talk about key issues plaguing the world today. And so, that being said, our topics today are Trump tariffs, Trump cutting spending, and transgender sports. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thompson and Mr. Rosas as they let us dive into our first topic today.
Well, my first thing is Trump has already had 64 executive orders signed in 2025 in his new presidency. Is this an abuse of power?
Is that an abuse of power? Well, his predecessors, right, and this would be good work for you guys standing out there. How many executive orders did Joe Biden and Barack Obama have in their first 100 days? I had reason to bet it's a very similar number as to what Trump has had with executive orders. Here's my question back to you. Is it an abuse of power because it undermines the legislative branch? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I guess.
Because, I mean, think about it. Executive orders, right, is just the president pretty much doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so, that being said, is it like he's kind of going away from the legislative branch, isn't he? And it's not just him, right? Is it also Joe Biden and Barack Obama? Like, when did all these executive orders start? Or do we go back to FDR, in World War II and the Great Depression when he had all of his executive orders?
So do you think executive orders to begin with are just a bad thing? Since they just undermine.
Well, I think that the purpose of our three branches of government, what we learned about last semester, is that we want to have checks and balances, right? And a separation of powers, like we mentioned. And so perhaps, right? And did this ultimately just start about, though, because of other presidents before Trump who set this idea, set this precedent? Did you guys find that stat?
Well, from Biden, it said that he signed more than 60 executive.
In his first 100 days? Yeah, so more than 60 executive orders in his first 100 days. So it seems that Trump's maybe a little bit ahead of pace there, but it's definitely interesting. What do you have to say, Mr. Thompson?
Well, I feel like it's hard for a president to make all the changes that they want to in their term while going through the legislative branch every single time because they have so many issues and so many problems that they want to fix and deal with immediately. And I feel like executive orders are a good way to switch.
Does it seem like executive orders, like it's like, okay, so Biden was president and he had his executive orders. They had their agenda, obviously, right? And then the Republicans and Trump come into office and they have their agenda. And it's almost like we just switched back, like went in a time machine back to 2020 almost, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I totally understand your point, but it just seems, and to answer Micah's question, that we've gotten to a point where it's like, is it abuse of power? I don't know, right? Or is that just the way that government works nowadays?
I think it's just a part of the presidency
Just
now.
a part of it now.
That's what the people voted for.
Does the president have too much power then? Because something that I'm going to go on with these executive orders are Trump's pardoning. I mean, he pardoned the people from January 6th, right? Some people call it insurrection. Some people call it, a protest, right?
Is there any restrictions to the executive orders, or could he like what could he all?
Well, yeah, theoretically there can be, right? And so like what you're gonna see is the judicial branch might look at some of these executive orders and block them. For example, birthright citizenship has been one that some federal judges have went in and said, well, we're not gonna end birthright citizenship due to the 14th Amendment. So sometimes, right, there is a little bit of checks and balances, but at least right away, right, when these things are put in, like, that's like, all right, now this is what we're going to do overnight, and so it's kind of crazy how that can change so quickly, for sure. All right.
Well, with the executive orders, how do you feel about Trump tariffing Canada, Mexico, and China with 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico and 10%?
Well, let me turn that back to you. What's the purpose of tariffs, right? What is Trump's goal with tariffs? And really, as we look at the history of the United States, what we learned about last year, tariffs, their main goal is to do what?
I guess to just get money from other countries and like assert power, kind of.
It might be kind of to assert power. I think that's interesting that you bring that up. Thompson,
Well,
go ahead.
It's gonna also increase the amount of products made in the United States.
That it is, right? Now and so that's the goal, right? Bring American jobs, increase buy USA, right? Buy USA, buy USA. Honestly, a lot of the goal of tariffs, at least in Trump, is that idea to make America great again. Here's the thing though. And I just was reading a headline this morning that talked about like grocery stores are going to limit how many eggs that they're going to sell to individuals, and things like that. So what are we going to see goods do since these tariffs are going up, right? Because obviously we buy a lot of things from China, so the goods are obviously going to go where?
They're gonna get inflated.
Yeah, right. And so I think the thing with these tariffs, right? I think it's kind of maybe an assertion of power. I don't know, but ultimately what we've got to understand is that the idea is to bring American jobs in, but are the American people going to suffer, and is that worth it? What do you guys think?
Well, I think that Trump might not be keeping these tariffs on forever as well. I feel like right now they're on the 90-day hold, correct?
Was it 90 or 30?
I think it was 90.
Was it 90? Okay, I thought it was 30 originally, but regardless, right? They're on a hold for at least a certain amount of time.
Yeah, so we don't know for sure, I guess, now whether they're going to be in effect for a long period of time or not.
Yeah.
So I feel like right now we're in a state of kind of not knowing what's going to happen with our goods
and then,
whether the prices are
and
going
then
to
you
go up or
see
not.
steel going up, and you see I'm sorry, in terms of tariffs, right? You see the tariffs 25% from other countries on steel, aluminum, regardless of where it comes from. Is that going to hurt production in the United States, right? Are people going to have to spend more money, and they're just going to say, well, we're not going to take on that product, right, or that project, and things like that? I don't know what they're going to do, but that's definitely an interesting thing there.
I feel like for the whole tariff thing, I feel like we're just going to be on hold here for a little bit before we can really just see what happens.
Yeah. And it's just interesting too when you think about like China obviously had their reactionary tariff, right? And so they ended up tariffing us at 15% on goods that we're sending to them after we tariffed them on 10%. So it's like, is this going to just escalate to a certain point, and are the American people going to be the ones who are hurt by it?
Mhm.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Very good. All right. Next topic, we have Trump cutting spending here. All right, what do you guys think about that? So obviously talking about Doge, Elon Musk, over, what was it, nearly $100 billion, $94 billion have already been
It's
cut.
still growing.
Still growing.
Too. And I just think the main thing that we're looking at here is what the United States was spending their money on, and in what ways were they spending taxpayers' dollars that were not useful. And I think that we got a list here of some things that just were a waste of money for the United States is how I would say it.
Before you read that list, do you think that a lot of American people understand where their tax dollars are going?
No, I feel like the United States does not give a clear-cut description on where all of the
So do
money
you think Doge is a
goes.
good thing? Let's start there, right? Is Doge a good thing for the American people, a good thing for the government? I mean, Elon Musk himself makes like $8 million a year just off the American government, or just the government, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, is that a good thing or not that he's kind of going through it with a fine-tooth comb? What do you think?
I think he's really, reevaluating where we were spending all of our money in general is a good thing, yes.
Okay.
And I think Elon Musk is one of the smartest humans in the United States for sure. So, I mean, to have that guy come in and be able to do all that work for us, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, fair. All right, what do you got here?
Also with like years of like overspending and being over a budget and just always being in debt, I feel like with Doge and cutting the spending, I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah, debt's at like 39 trillion, right, that we owe, right? And so something that we were looking at this week was, where does that exactly come from? Well, government bonds, a trade deficit, things like that. So how do we cut that spending? And then Mr. Thompson, I think you were gonna read a little bit upon the DEI spending and USAID spending perhaps here.
Yeah, the United States spent $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. $70,000 for production of DEI musical in Ireland. $2.5 million for electric-free vehicles in Vietnam. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala, and $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt.
All right. So, probably assuming that, there was one article that I was reading about this. that it says that some of these were proposed, and I would have to go back and check the article on which ones actually went through. I want to say that the Serbia's workplace, the 1.5 million to Serbia for sure went through. Some of the more transgender opera and the comic book, and then the stuff in Guatemala, I think that was proposed but not approved. And so there's some nuances there, right? And it's kind of, one of the websites that I was looking for was from the White House, but then another article from the AP kind of said, wait a minute, that wasn't actually approved. And so there's some nuances there, but it was recommended, right? And then the one that I always think about was the Sesame Street in Iran too. That was funding that was going there. And it brings up a unique discussion, and I love to have this discussion with you students and really make you think, is it the United States' job to provide for the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for people throughout the rest of the world?
Well, I would say yes, but I think, $2 million for sex changes, I feel like that's kind of overdoing it. People can have the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness without having to change their identity.
Is it America's job to pay for that, would be the
To
question.
pay for their sex changes? No, I don't believe so whatsoever, no.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting when you look at the funding and stuff like that. Mr. Micah, you have anything to add to that, sir?
Well, with that, is it America's job to protect in other countries? I think yeah, it is, but to protect them, not to give them money for stuff that they don't really need, and give them stuff for money that I think is just not useful.
All right, a fair point that you make. Well, that is all that we're going to have time for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next Friday. Go Vikings! Yeah.